Hi, I'm Kim, and my business, Killer Custom Rockwear, and I'm going to talk to you today about my craft, which is sewing leather and denim things. I'm going to first start off with sort of like how I ended up in this rather niche field, and then I'm going to talk about a more general idea of like how it is to run a craft-based business or the artist as a business person, so you can sort of like expand that to your daily knowledge if you are a crafty person. I'm very caffeinated right now. I'm kind of a night person, so the coffee is delicious. All right, so slides. I have lots of slides. That's our company logo, Killer Custom Rockwear. Heavy metal craft. That's me. There's actually like a lot of heavy metal crafts people. So I think, subcultures in music tend to attract like artsy people, but not a lot of people make a full-time job out of it. So how I got started was playing in metal bands. That was my first band, This Means You, and Kristen, I think, came to see us like 15 years ago. That's me, the bald one. I actually have alopecia areata, which is an immune system condition that causes hair loss, but I get the magical X-Men power of transformer hair. So when you see pictures of me or you interact with me around Charlottesville, don't ever expect me to look the same. So I made that outfit out of like leather and vinyl, and I was always trying to come up with like a different outfit for each show, which got a little bit out of hand with the amount of shows we were playing. But I learned how to make things like stand out and stand up on stage, putting zippers and weird closures and things that can pop open while you're performing resulted in so many lessons learned the hard way. So designing clothes for stage or for a wrestling ring is different than haute couture. And I feel like when focusing on craft is different than art, because you're making things that people generally use. So you're focusing on, much like illustration is different than high art, you're focusing on making with a specific purpose or use. And so we keep that in mind. I can't just make some crazy sketch. Somebody has to wear this thing on stage, and if it's really hot and really uncomfortable or breaks, like there's no point in it looking cool, because it has to function first. So this is, I'm going to sort of show like the evolution of the early stage wear that I designed for myself, and then I'll show a bunch of pictures of the things that we design and talk about our process real quick. So that's sort of like my looks over the years. That's A Winner Lost, my black metal band from Canada. I'm not from Canada, but they are. This is Kung Fu Dykes. None of us are dykes, but it's a cool thing to represent. Yeah, that's getting pretty close to like Guar, which most people know me from. That's Volvatron, my scumdoggian alter ego with giant blood-spewing tits. I miss those. Yeah, that's all molded out of latex. Like, I don't have a studio to do that. Guar does in Richmond, but if you ever get a chance to tour the Slave Pit, they have really cool making processes for that. Much more involved than sewing. You have to sculpt and mold everything and do the whole like face cast. And this is my new local band, Fulton Ave, and I made, speaking of latex, Edna Gein dress for that because it's a band about a serial killer. So it's uplifting. It's actually feminist because I think other than maybe like Elizabeth Bathory, there's never really been a female sexual sadist. So like, role-playing into that, you're expanding what women can be. All right, so some of my other like early stuff. I started off making costumes for Halloween because I had no other outlet. I was in college at the time, and then I had a career in academia in digital archaeology, I guess is the best way, but that's a whole different talk. And then I started making corsets, which is pretty much the hardest thing that you could possibly pattern, and I made those because I couldn't afford them. And then I made random commissions for people who wanted different things and just sort of self-taught myself how to make garments. There's a whole way that you make things if you're like formally trained in making clothes and you go to fashion design school. That's not me. I just sort of had to take garments from thrift stores and things and take them apart and reconstruct them, and I figured out how they work that way. And in which case, I'm talking about function. So how do you make something affordable to a musician or to a person that would wear a crazy outfit like this? You know, you can make a $5,000 suit for an investment banker, so they have money, but like the average Slayer fan is not gonna buy a $5,000 jacket. So how do you pay for all the materials and like design something so that you can make it in the amount of time that someone can, you know, afford it? So I started upcycling things. So this was my first jacket that sort of started the business. That was like a thrift store jean jacket that I put a bunch of thrift store leather on, and then I went to like the military surplus store and got these neat straps that were all worn in and various metal bits and some patches of bands I liked. And I wore that jacket, and my friend Joey Jordison from the band Slipknot, which is a pretty big band, he loved the jacket. He's very small, like the same size as I am, so he kind of indefinitely borrowed the thing from me. This is him playing guitar. He's a drummer, but he's playing guitar in his band Murder Dolls in this. And then he wore it to like a bunch of award shows, like the Grammys and the Metal Grammys and things, and then all these people kept calling me and saying like, where did you get that jacket? Can I have one? And pretty soon I had like 3 or 4 months of jacket orders, and I was like, you know what? How many jackets per week do I have to make to like quit my job? And the answer was like 4. So I quit my job. So design. So here's some of our designs. I've been doing this full time for 5 years now. So we have, if you go to killicustomrockware.com, hundreds and hundreds of designs. Each piece is different. We try to make things different, which is exhausting. And sort of brings me to my next point, which is if you are a craftsperson designing a business, do you want to just have 2 or 3 things you make and make a routine and a process about that? Or are you going to do custom orders and like custom commissions? In which case, figuring out how to schedule yourself, how much time things take, dealing with people's subjectivity is a whole different nightmare of how to, because each project is totally different. So that's taken 5 years of learning like what not to do with scheduling custom crafts. Usually I sort of now anticipate that things are gonna take, you know, half, again, as more time, 2 times as much time as I think they're gonna take, and then we can be on schedule. Or dealing with rock stars, that's another thing. You know, they don't plan in advance. Like, hey, can I have this thing tomorrow in Germany? And if you want this job, you have to say yes. So if you already have your schedule booked with commissions and it's really rigid, you sort of have to schedule yourself like a doctor's office, right? They take walk-ins. So you're a craftsperson, no one's gonna have a craft emergency, but maybe in whatever your craft is, somebody's got some show coming up and they really want something and it's a really cool thing, and if you just booked yourself, then that's your sleep that you're giving up, or your life, and then you're gonna hate your craft, which is what you shouldn't do, because it's a luxury to be able to like work with your hands for a living, I think, and make something that you put your heart and your inspiration into. So you can't make yourself hate it by overbooking yourself. So that's my one advice. So this is what I do for my process. I use mainly vintage sewing machines, which I started using out of financial necessity because you can find them at thrift stores. And then I taught myself to fix them. But in reality, now that I have money from the business, I still use vintage machines because those things are tanks. They never break. So this is like a Singer 251. That thing will sew through your finger. This is like when my business was at my house. So I had like 15 sewing machines around like 3 rooms in my house. Now I have an actual studio. It's on West Main and the Star Hill building. And they all have like different purposes. I use a lot of these Singer 66s and 99s from the 50s because they sew through leather and denim really well, and all you have to do is oil them to keep them running. So this is a picture of me working side stage for King Diamond, who's a heavy metal legend, fixing their wardrobe on tour. And this is also when I used to work in my house, cutting out patterns. First I like make a sort of basic shape for the garment or a base. Or if I'm using a found jacket, I use that as a base. Depends on whether I'm patterning it or whatever. And then I have these mannequins everywhere, which are really creepy, because if you walk around the corner, it kind of peripherally looks like someone's there. But alas, it's not. Then I take the materials, like this jacket is lambskin that I salvaged from vintage 80s ugly trench coats from thrift stores. So I'm like recycling and reusing, and then I take all the leather out, I put it through like a chemical process, usually in my bathtub. If I'm on the road, I'll use like laundromats. And then it comes out, this is the sort of like guesswork of the process, because every leather is different and the chemical process makes it do different things. So this jacket is a combination of various effects of chemicals on lambskin. Which I could frame in some really like artsy bunk rhetoric, but it just looks cool. And then with denim, I do a lot with distressed denim, which is the same, like different denims fray in different ways, react to dyes in different ways. So I'll take denim, cut it up, put it through the wash, put different dyes and paints on it and see what happens. A lot of times I don't do like a sketch ahead of time. I let the materials and the processes guide the result, which I think is a very art way of working things rather than a craft way of working things. So it's a process-based design process with a lot of things. Here's a photo of me in my old house studio with my original Kenmore 158 from 1976 that I made like 90% of my first garments with. And then these are just some images of the studio. That's sort of a close-up of like what the stuff looks like when I'm done with it. I want it to look like it's been through a war or buried in a grave. Again, uplifting. Metal people are actually really nice and happy, but I feel like, it's that whole like Milton Paradise Lost thing where you're speaking as like Satan or whatever. I'm like, how do I make this sound less evil? That's hard for me being a metal person, because I'm like, it's like a happy Satan. Because we have a cruise in the Caribbean, and you can like go Satan from a hot tub, and someone brings you a cocktail. And it's hot chicks. Who doesn't like that? And sometimes I gotta work on the road. This is like me at a venue with the machine on like a road case in the club, fixing Machine Head's wardrobe, and I'm not a great photographer, so that's what that is. And here's me in like a guitar store. So this sort of, found locations, to use the art terms. And then one of our road wardrobes in a road case. What not pictured here is the smell of that. But it looks cool. Here's you can see some of the like process-based details that we come up with. It's like distressed leather with paint over top, and distressed denim with colored paint over top, and various embroidery stitches that aren't actual embroidery stitches. I just make them up. And that is a fray and dye process. The little like Sam the Eagle looking thing up there. And then make some, patches, custom patches for every person and paint them. Making slow fashion affordable and knowing your market, art for artists. So the idea of this is like, if you want to start a craft-based business, there's two things you can do. So if you like making something, there's like one idea, which is art for art's sake. So you're just painting or creating things that you like to create. And I would say I did that with my stage clothes. And then there's what people that you know want to buy. So like, I know a bunch of metalheads. I never went into my life thinking like, I want to be a metal fashion designer. That probably wouldn't have happened if I thought that. But like, it's the first thing I started making that a bunch of people that I knew wanted to buy. So I made lots of other things and I couldn't sell them for the life of me, and I wasn't really even trying to sell them, but all of a sudden I'm doing this thing and then everybody wants it. So it sells itself and you don't get frustrated trying to sell yourself because you just, hey, people need this thing. Yeah, and I already know them. So that's my piece of advice if you want to get into a craft business, is know what people you know want. And then how do you, what can those people afford? Okay, and that's a pretty easy test. People stop buying it when they can't afford it, and if you're not making any money, then you either have to figure out how to make that thing cheaper or don't do it. So, yeah, using salvage materials was a really big thing for me, because if I went to buy really nice leather and really nice denim, it would like be the entire cost of the thing. And then sewing fast. I'm not a quilter. Quilting takes a lot of time, and weaving and things like that. Knitting, you know, you'd have to charge like $400 for a blanket if you were a crochet person trying to make it affordable. So how do you ditch the perfectionism in your head if you're a perfectionist and just be like, this is good enough, like go. You know, estimating, rounding, doing things fast, staying focused, all that's important. So here's just some live pictures of my work in action on metal bands. That's Machine Head, that's Soilwork from Sweden, Arch Enemy, Children of Bodom from Finland, Machine Head again. They've been wearing my stuff for years. They were my first like big metal band clients. That's Arnel Pineda of Journey. So I don't know if you know his story, but it's pretty awesome. Steve Perry couldn't sing anymore, and he got the gig by singing in a Journey cover band in the Philippines and putting the videos on YouTube, and then Neil Schon called him and he thought it was a prank. But he's awesome. Like, he puts on an amazing show, and it's an honor to have made clothes for him. Then Alice Cooper, that's also like a Wayne's World, we're not worthy. That's his wife, Cheryl Cooper, in my nurse dress I made for them. They've been buying that nurse dress for 40 years from Halloween stores, and my friend Nita plays guitar for Alice Cooper. She's a super shredder. And I was like, hey guys, can I make you some better nurse dresses? And they really liked it, so there we go. Trivium, that's Peter Takrin of Hypocrisy and Pain and Bloodbath, and he was wearing this straight jacket. A lot of times I see people wearing something on stage, like Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden, who needs help with his stage wear, even though Iron Maiden is a great band. And I'm like, let me fix that for you. So he was wearing this straight jacket that like his mom made that looked like a Halloween store thing, and I came up with this sort of Bram Stoker's Dracula, like insane asylum look with hand-dyed and things like that. That's King Diamond and Andy LaRoque, his guitarist, and that's like one of my favorite bands, so it was probably my favorite band to dress their Abigail tour 2 years ago, and that's like a live DVD of that whole performance, which is, if you're into metal at all, I highly recommend. So that's Nita, Alice Cooper's guitarist, who's my friend. She's amazing. Machine Head, again, we did a white wardrobe for them. White is the new black. Creator. This is a band from Italy, Elven King. Satyricon from Norway. Death Angel from San Francisco. That's Necrophobic from Sweden. And then I have lots of WWE wrestlers, which is a funny story how I got into them. Like, I was on tour with Guar, and at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I used to get these calls from like press people wanting interviews, and I had to answer it in character. And I don't know if you know anything about Guar, but basically the idea is that we are scum dogs and all humans are like total stupid fodder and pathetic. And so I answered the phone in character, and I was like, what do you want, you stupid piece of shit? Wasting my time. Should be getting laid right now. And it was a guy from WWE, Bray Wyatt, who cold called me and was asking about a vest. And I was like, oh, excuse me. Yes. Being wrestlers, I think they understood the in-character thing. But anyway, I started dressing him, and then now I've got lots of wrestlers that wear my stuff. This is Randy Orton, who's a very famous wrestler, and it's been an adjustment to make like very tiny pants for very big men. Like, there's not much you can do with the amount of fabric in trunks. Not to mention it makes fittings awkward, but at least spandex is forgiving. That's Braun Strowman, who's very large, so it's like custom size. And Bray Wyatt, my original WWE guy, he wears all my stuff for 4 or 5 years now. And then I like the Fulton Ave thing, that's where I got the idea. I made that for WrestleMania for him, the flesh shaper. Eric Rowan. Anyway, I was just out of time. So it's more WWE stuff. Oh yeah, and then this is sort of like the I can die happy because my work has been immortalized in plastic now. So you can go to Walmart and buy that. It's like Braun Strowman with my little logo on his butt. I think that won't biodegrade for like a millennia, so be remembered. Yeah, so I already pretty much described that. Anyway, you should make stuff if you like making, and I would encourage everyone, since we live in America and it's actually really, there's a lot of resources to help you succeed as a small business in this country, and especially in Charlottesville, find what people want that you make. Thank you.
Two-part question. What is the most challenging thing and the most rewarding thing of starting your own business?
The most challenging thing is creating a monster. When you start, the question was, I'll repeat it. What is the most challenging thing and the most rewarding thing when starting your own business? So the most challenging thing is when you start your own business, it becomes a monster and you can't put it down. I feel like everyone that's an entrepreneur works totally crazy hours. I know I like have weeks where I'm pulling like actually 20-hour days and things, and having a work-life separation. I sort of reached my breaking point at that at one point because my business was in my house. So it had taken over 3 of 4 bedrooms, and my work was always around me, and I was always working. And a few years back, my boyfriend moved in with me, and I'm like, I want to, have an evening or like take a weekend. And that was such a rare occasion. I was like, this is ridiculous. So I rented a studio, and then I go there certain hours, and then I come home. But I don't really have the luxury of saying like 9 to 5 or whatever. That sometimes there are deadlines, people want changes, machines break, and you're the person responsible for all that. Also, like wearing so many hats, you can hire people, but who has money for that in a craft-based business? Like I am the manager, I'm the webmaster, I'm the email person, I'm the designer, I'm the sewer. I have a part-time sewing assistant who comes in about 20 hours a week, and she helps a lot. But yeah, juggling all those responsibilities. I started doing this thing like and this is really helpful advice actually, because it's totally changed my business. Booking myself these like mini sabbaticals every 2 or 3 months for like 2 weeks or even 1 week to stop the normal process of just making and like plan the business and overhaul the website and get caught up on paperwork. So every 2 or 3 months I have my like make new samples, like design something, think about this business in a different way, stop what you're doing, and because it becomes this endless cycle. And the most rewarding thing is when you have successes, I think, like seeing something that you made on TV is really cool, or like on a big stage, or being a part of a band that I've loved for years in a small way by creating their stage wardrobe. Okay, next question.
I was just curious about the design process. When you get commissions, how involved are you in making those designs? Like, do people come to you to say, I want a jacket, or do they have ideas? Like, can you describe that?
It's a little bit, so the question was, how involved am I in the design process, and what happens? Do people come to me with designs, or do they just say, you want a jacket? So usually the process is people will have a general idea of what they want, and they send photos of other jackets they like from my website or from elsewhere, or a sketch, and then I just do my thing with that. Sometimes people have no idea what they want, and I hate that, because they always have an idea what they want after you make the thing. It's just like, oh, just do your thing, and then you make it, and they're like, actually, I wanted this, and this, and not like that. But Sometimes people have totally specific ideas. Sometimes they want sketches. I don't usually like to do sketches because, as I was saying, I like to let the materials guide my design process in a found object sort of way. But yeah, it depends. It's a range. Next question.
Yeah, I know you said you were mostly self-taught as a sewer, but did you do any sort of like specific learning around alteration, fitting, tailoring in that part of it? Because I know that could be a really technical aspect.
So the question was, I don't have any formal training, but did I do any schooling related to alteration or tailoring? And no, but I had some mentoring. So my mother taught me how to sew basic things from a pattern, like a simplicity pattern, which would teach you the general concept of how to do like seam allowances and, sewing craft basics. Then my best friend's sister taught me how to make corsets and draw patterns from that. And once you learn how to pattern that and sew that, is really technical and really precise. So I felt like I take that knowledge to other things. I don't have any schooling in alterations, but I was a computer scientist for a while. So like math factors and a lot. Like I've had several assistants that are not math inclined, and they have trouble with really fast calculations of tailoring adjustments, and I don't seem to have that problem. But it's hard. The biggest challenge with that is, I would say that fit is the number one thing that I have the most trouble with our stuff, because we're working remotely for people in like 50 different countries. So I basically have a guy like measure his jeans in these places, and I think if I gave the same pair of jeans to 5 guys in 5 different countries and they measured it, I would get different numbers. And obviously, if you buy a size 32 jeans from 5 different stores, they're gonna fit you differently. So we can't really guarantee that it's going to fit perfectly, but I do adjust it after the fact once you try it on. So some people have trouble understanding that there's a variable there. Like, yes, I'll adjust it if it doesn't fit right, but I can't guarantee that Australian size 30 is going to fit the curve of your butt like an American 30 or whatever. Yeah.
So how have you, just to elaborate on that, how have you been able to deal with when someone is not satisfied with your work?
The question is, how do I deal with someone who's not satisfied, which is also a good learning curve, I think, because there's no business or no thing on earth where people are going to be 100% satisfied, and there's the type of people that are just going to create problems for you no matter what. In general, we have a really high satisfaction rate. I would say the biggest problem is it doesn't fit, and usually they're happy after I adjust it. Some people just don't understand the concept of what it is that we do with the distressed things. So they'll get something and they're like, this is frayed and there's a hole in it. And I'm like, yeah, it's supposed to be there. You can only really do so much. I can't give refunds on custom orders because I made this thing just for you. No one else is gonna buy it, and all I can do is say, I'll fix it, and if they're not happy with that, then, you kind of have to just write them off. But that's really been the super minority of people, luckily. At some point, you have to draw the line on problem customers. You're like, I've offered to fix it. That's all you can do. But it weighs on you. I think if you put your heart into things, when someone doesn't like it, that's hard to deal with. But that's when you have to switch on business person mode, customer service. Also, hat.
With all that leather, hot lights you mentioned earlier, how do you keep them cool?
So that's the thing, keeping cool. Real leather is actually breathes really well. Vegan leather, I have a lot of vegan clients, and I do accommodate them, of course, with animal-free products, but I would say I never like using vegan leather because the thing doesn't breathe. It feels like you're wearing plastic. Real leather breathes, especially if you leave it unlined. I leave a lot of my things unlined, which is another confusion with someone who's like, there's no lining in this. Well, do you want an extra layer of fabric on you when you're on stage? A lot of people want removable sleeves. I tend to use very lightweight leathers and denims, but there's a lot of warrior mindset to metal people. They're wearing that leather jacket and those boots even if it's 90 degrees. No flip-flops, Plus, a lot of the bands are from like Sweden and Norway, and it's not very hot there.
Did you feel like when you started working with leather, you know, when you sew it, you put a hole in it, and the hole is there? Did you take any classes or, you know, on how to work with leather specifically, or because it's distressed, does that kind of cancel out that problem?
So the question is, how did I learn to work with leather? And there's specific things about leather, like once you make a hole in it, the hole exists. And I don't have any formal training, but I did have a lot of initially what not to do. Like, okay, well, this messed this piece of fabric up, so especially if I cut it wrong. But with the distressed look, it's pretty forgiving, because like if I cut something too small and it looks like this, it's not going to look bad if I put another piece of leather over it. So that helps. But a lot of it was learning about machines, like the vintage machines. So I started off with just these Singers and Kenmores, which do great on like a garment leather. But if I were to try to sew like a motorcycle leather, it would not work. I got this machine from a company called Sailrite. They're a great American company. And they make industrial sewing machines that are portable for people who sew sails for boats. So you can it comes in like a road case, and you can put it on your boat. And it's made to sew through stuff that's like that, because sails, you have to fix your sail if you're like stranded in, you know, like the East Indian Sea. So that thing is great, and it's helped me work a lot with leather that was difficult or coated.
You make shoes too?
I don't make shoes. Being a cobbler is a totally different skill set. Someday I might want to learn.
Awesome, we'll do one more.
One more question? You raised your hand first.
Sure. Yeah, I was just wondering, like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if there's any other industries that you would consider like serving. I imagine WWE popped up and you're like, oh yeah, they could be things too. I don't know if there's any like goals that you might have in terms of clients and that kind of thing.
The question was, in a few years, like, are there any other industries that I would like to serve? Like wrestling popped up, and yeah, I started with just musicians, and now I do musicians, and I would say wrestlers are like 50% of my business now. The thing I really want to get off the ground is like a ready-to-wear manufactured line, which I'm working with a designer in Fredericksburg who runs brands called Eyewear and Veriless. You may have seen him on your Facebook feed wearing kilts. But you know, the thing, it's slow fashion right now, so I have like a 2 or 3 month backlog to make one piece. But I would love to have a line that people could buy in like high-end rock and roll stores, or just online, you can just buy the thing, or, you know, booths at events. I think it's a little above the price range of what you'd buy just like at a street fair or at a rock and roll concert or something, but having a manufactured line also help with like passive income. But that's been a thing I've been trying to get off the ground for several years, and I finally found the right people and the right tools to do that. So that's the next expansion. I don't know about any other genres of, you know, stage or ring or whatever that I'm missing. I haven't done a lot of country people, but it seems like they would like leather jackets. I don't know.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you for having me.